3 active duty Marines have been arrested and charged for their involvement in the January 6th insurrection, highlighting the military's dangerous susceptibility to right-wing extremism. So this particular story is a bit sobering, it's a bit sad, it's a bit scary, because it illuminates part of the domestic right-wing extremist threat that I think very often we as a public, as a society, often overlook, right? I know I do. I'll be the first one to admit it. I've got a certain conception of a member of a right-wing militia or a MAGA hardliner having grown up in the rural Deep South. And it's typically it's somebody that you would see lumbering out of the woods in like the movie Deliverance, right? You got a purty mouth, just wearing a MAGA hat instead. But the truth is, these are not all, good old boys and bubbas hefting their daddy's sawed-off shotgun, right? Some of these people are actually very well trained, very experienced, and in sufficient numbers, that makes them dangerous to the American government, to the U.S. military, to law enforcement, and really to American society as a whole. Because there's a subset of veterans and active duty soldiers, not just veterans, but active duty soldiers, people who are still enlisted and serving in the U.S. military, whose psychological profile and background and contexts make them uniquely vulnerable to recruitment by right-wing extremists, people like right-wing extremist militias and groups like the Oath Keepers, the Boogaloo Boys, the Proud Boys. And this story kind of emphasizes that. So these aren't the first ones, but 3 additional active duty soldiers, Marines specifically, the Few, the Proud, were charged for storming the Capitol. They were arrested and charged for participating in the January 6th insurrection. Axios reports that they're the latest in a series of former and current military personnel that face consequences for participating in the attack. The 3 involved were Corporal Micah Coomer and Sergeants Joshua Abate and Dodgedale Hellinan, and they were inside the Capitol building for about an hour after breaching it, okay? They posted Instagram photos, like they took photos, they put a MAGA hat on a statue and posed with it. They uploaded it to Instagram. According to one, I think it's an FBI affidavit, and one Instagram conversation on November 7th, 2020, so 2 months before the attack, one of the 3 that was arrested, Corporal Coomer, had allegedly expressed his beliefs that the election was unfair and fraudulent. He also at one point noted support for the far-right extremist group Boogaloo Boys, which has called for a second civil war. As far as specific charges, each Marine faces 4 misdemeanor charges, including disorderly conduct in the Capitol building with the intent to impede or disrupt Congress. Now, it's entirely possible that during the course of investigation and the course of, whatever litigation may ensue, that these charges may be dropped or they may be increased, because some members who participated in the January 6th insurrection, like members of the Oath Keepers, they've been successfully charged, and I think even convicted, of seditious conspiracy, which is a hell of a lot, more of a big deal than 4 misdemeanor charges, right? So this may not be the end for them. They may be exonerated, or they may face worse charges as time goes on. Now, Axios also reports, it was a reminder, and I think it was 2021, that the Pentagon, like members of the Pentagon, went on record to say that right-wing extremism is fairly, I don't want to say fairly popular among the military, but that the military is, certain members of the military have a unique vulnerability to recruitment by these groups. Like, you would think on paper that, given that every soldier, swears an oath to the Constitution, to the United States government, not the president, even though the president's their commander-in-chief, you would think that that level of patriotism would make them less vulnerable to, participating in an attempted coup. But there is a disturbing amount of former veterans and soldiers who are vulnerable to that. And there are reasons why. I know that, let me see if I can find it here, but there's an analysis done by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and I've got it here, and they mentioned some of the reasons why. Number one, it's pretty obvious why these extremist groups try to recruit from veterans or active duty soldiers. Their experience, right? They've been trained by the mightiest fighting force in the history of civilization. That's a rare commodity. That's a value that is priceless if you're looking to be this organized militia with aspirations to try to overthrow the federal government, right? So you would want your members to have the training and the education and the experience provided by the U.S. military. So it has strategic and social value for extremists. But it also mentions that in terms of the veterans in particular, they're dire straits because we don't take care of veterans in this country. I mean, you saw the activism that was done by Jon Stewart famously, not just last year, but also, I mean, for the past 10 or 15 years. Many of our veterans are in dire straits in terms of their health care, in terms of psychological care. The trope of veterans dying on the street, that happens. That happens in abundance. Suicidality among veterans as well. So the both financial and resource context, as well as the psychological vulnerability, make veterans and soldiers vulnerable to this sort of extremist recruitment. And it also, I don't want to phrase this. I don't want to say it would be similar, but these right-wing militia groups go out of their way to try to mimic and imitate the structure of the United States Armed Forces. Like, I don't want to call them LARPers because they're more dangerous than that, but the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys and the Oath Keepers, they have a chain of command. There's like a militarism. It's not just the firearms and like the combat training. Like, they try to emulate the culture, the absolute institution of the military. It would be kind of laughable if they weren't so dangerous, but it is there. And in 2021, the Pentagon did report, they did an internal report that domestic extremists pose a serious threat to the military because members of the military are vulnerable to recruitment. Military members are highly prized by these groups as they bring legitimacy to their causes and enhance their ability to carry out attacks. In addition to potential violence, white supremacy and white nationalism pose a threat to the good order and discipline within the military because, again, those are much more prevalent than they should be in the United States Armed Forces. So, again, this story and others like it are pretty scary. The three Marines in question have not been convicted yet. It's just beginning for them. They've just been arrested and charged. So who knows what might happen. But this is something that we should all be mindful of because it's not just, again, lumbering hillbillies in overalls, hefting antiquated shotguns, and it's not just that stereotypical redneck that I think a lot of people laugh off. There are actually highly skilled, trained, and experienced veterans and soldiers who are vulnerable to these groups. And that is yet another reason why the American government, which is the richest and most powerful, again, in the history of civilization, why we have an obligation, both morally and contractually, I would argue as well, but also as a matter of pragmatism, right? So 3 different reasons. Morally, it's just the right thing to do. Number 2, we made a commitment to these people when we encouraged them to enlist. And number 3, for just sheer pragmatism, we need to take care of our troops and our veterans in terms of their health care, their psychological care, and their benefits, especially after they leave the service, right? Because life doesn't end for them, nor should it. Hey, you! Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, and I hope that you did, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. And if you absolutely hated the video, the best revenge for you is also to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. That'll teach me. If you want to share an opinion or share some feedback, go ahead and leave a comment, all right? 2023 is a year of change, hence the aggressive rebrand and commitment to new content. Inspired by my friends Luke Beasley and STV Philly, my personal goal for this channel is to hit 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So I'm hoping you'll do me a solid by spreading the word and the videos to potential fans and hate watchers alike. And in the meantime, we'll be pondering politics again with you very soon.